Midjourney creates great art from a prompt. In an earlier video I looked at whether the Midjourney AI could be used in game development and conceptualization. Spoiler alert, I think it can. In this video I'm going to go over a technique for creating a character that can be reused in many subsequent scenes. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that every still image you see in this video was generated by Midjourney. It really is amazing what you can do with this tool. Normally when you type a prompt you will get a semi-random picture that fits the prompt. For example, here are 4 images from the same prompt.
A young man with messy black hair.
As you can see, these images are not consistent enough to be used to represent the same character in a story. A user on the Midjourney Discord, by the name of Clarinet, was kind enough to teach me how to puppet a character. In this video I'm offering a slightly modified version of their technique. By following these simple steps, we will be able to create a puppet character that you can reuse in different environments. If you have no idea how to reproduce this workflow, then join us on our Discord where we may be able to help. If you know how to generate Midjourney images already, then you are good to go, but come and join us anyway.
Step 1. Create your puppet.
A puppet is a named character that you train the AI with and then reuse in multiple scenes. The first step is to create your initial puppet image. This can be as simple as finding a good image online or in your personal collection. You can also use Midjourney images. For this example, I'm going to use the second image in this set from our earlier prompt. We will upscale this image and rate it. It is very important that you rate the image as this is the start of the training process.
Which upscaling should you use?
Midjourney has multiple upscale modes. Upscaling is taking the initial generated image and adding detail and clarity to it. Personally, I think light upscale is best for this work. It adds fewer details to the face but does add some clarity over the initial image. However, you may feel differently. That's okay, use what works best for you. It's a different story for max upscaling. Since we will be using this image as a prompt in the next step, there is little point in max upscaling as fine detail will not be used. That said, if you want a higher fidelity image for other purposes, go ahead and max upscale.
Step 2. Give your puppet a name.
In order to work with your puppet, you need to give it a name and train the AI to reproduce this character whenever you use that name. You need to pick a name that is not commonly assigned to images. That includes names that are assigned to pets or similar. So, no celebrities or Fido. The actual name doesn't matter as long as it is unusual. It does not have to match the name in your game or story. Think of it as the actor's name rather than the character's name. To train the AI to associate the name with this puppet, we need to generate a set of images from the puppet image in the previous step. To do this, use an image prompt with a strong weighting, such as IW2. Also dial down the stylistic freedom to ensure as close a match to the original image as possible. I often use S1200 to allow a little style to come in, but you could go down to the minimum of 625. I like to use the same seed parameter to ensure each of my images is fairly similar. You also need to provide the textual description you originally used to generate the image. The images created may or may not suit your purpose. If you don't like them, simply change the seed in the prompt and try again. For my first run I got these 4 images. These looked good to me. I upscaled them and rate them as well so that the AI will continue to generate images like them. This process is training the AI to associate the name Unusual B. George with images like these. Once you have upscaled and rated these 4, consider generating more in the same way. Remember to change the seed value. Be careful though, you don't want to confuse the AI with too much variation associated with the name.
What makes a good training image?
Generally, I look to the overall shape of the face and nose. Small variations in hairstyle don't matter as people's hair will naturally change and movement will also affect how it lays. Obviously you don't want too much variation, but a little isn't a major issue. You are going for concept art here, not final detailed art. The key is to get the same core structure in each image you rate.
How much is enough?
Continue this process using variations of your initial image. If you get a particularly strong image, you might also use that as an image prompt, remembering to use a high image weighting and a low stylistic rating. The more images you create and rate, the better the AI will be at creating your character images. However, be aware of things heading in the wrong direction. Each generation should be converging on a more and more consistent character image. If you find you are starting to stray too far, don't create more iterations from that source. A good question is how many training rated images are enough. I find 4 to 8 highly rated images are enough to get fairly consistent results.
Step 3. Place your puppet into settings.
At this point we are ready to place our puppet into a scene. This means we need to start working on our prompt craft. Pay attention to the structure of the prompt here, it is important. The general structure is setting, name and essential description, puppeting, and then the usual style information and parameters. Here's Sora to show us how it's done.
Okay, time for George to have a holiday, I think. So let's go with Imagine Tropical Beach. Let's make sure we have a sunny day and clear blue skies. And then we need our usual text for George. So Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. So that's the phrase that we trained the AI on before. So now we're saying unusual B. George is taking a selfie. I think we probably want to do this in aspect ratio 9:16. Let's see what we come up with here. Okay, those don't look too great. This one in the bottom right looks okay. These other ones, I'm not sure why he's got palm trees growing out of him. This bottom right looks okay, but I think we can do better than that. So let's take that same prompt and do imagine. Now, it likes you to be very deliberate about what you want in the scene, very descriptive. But I've often found that if you have duplication, it kind of confuses it. So tropical beach, sunny day, clear blue skies. I think we can probably drop the clear blue skies because it's implied by the sunny day. The middle piece needs to stay the same. And I've also found that sometimes natural language words like is can cause problems. So I'm going to take that out as well. Now, let's see what we get now. Okay, that's looking a bit better, I think. I like this one in the top right. That one looks pretty good. The others, you still have a bit of a problem. Not much of a face here. Not sure why he's got a beard here. That's not usual, but what's more important is his arm and hand looks weird. So I think this top right looks pretty good. So let's upscale that. That's 2. So let's see how that turns out. I'm also going to do some variations on that one too. All right, so there's our variations and our upscale. Let's have a look at the variations first. I kind of like this one in the bottom right. Get a hint of a palm tree behind here. I think actually this original one is better. So we're going to stick with that, although it's a bit of a funny angle on the horizon there. Have we got the same thing here? And no, the horizon is better there. Let's try upscaling 4 as well for comparison. You'll see that we also have these other detailed upscale and beta upscale. I have light upscale as the default. That's configurable in settings. But sometimes I find that the detailed upscale or the beta upscale are better. So let's do those as well and take a look. Okay, let's have a look at those. So that was the original. This one's still working. We'll come back to that one. It looks a little, I don't know, pouty in this one. I'm not sure. So let's give that one I think a smiley. This one looks pretty good. I do find this horizon line to be a bit disturbing though. I guess he's got the camera held at an angle, but it just feels wrong. So I'm going to give that another happy face. And this, of course, has the same problem, but I think the finish in the face here is better. And so I think I'll give that one a smiley face. And we'll just delete that and that and that. I think let's maybe take some variations on that one and see what comes out. So far, I think this is my favorite. Yeah, we're getting some that it's early yet, but these look like they're a little bit less pouty, so we might be all right with one of these. Let's have a look. Yeah, that one's awful. Bit too much of a shadow on that, but it's quite good. Bit too pouty. And that one. So let's try upscaling 2 and 4. Okay, that's those two. It's a bit kind of cartoony at the bottom. He's got no shoulder. I didn't notice that, so that's no good. Let's throw that one out completely. I like that one. Let's try the different methods of upscale for those two. All right, let's have a look at these two. It's looking pretty good. Definitely looks like unusual B. George. That one's kind of nice too. I'm going to go with this one.
Thanks, Sora. There are a few things to note about the prompt used by Sora. The first part is clearly defining the setting. As with all Midjourney prompts, you need to be as explicit as possible. The second part contains both the name and the description of the puppet character we have created. Sometimes you will not need the full description, but I always add it for clarity. The more help we give the AI, the better. Finally, in the puppeting instructions, we need to be conscious of what the AI is associating with your named character. Since we trained on a head and shoulders portrait, the puppeting section needs to accommodate this. Use prompts where the body is not a primary part of the posing of the character. Of course, if we created a full body character, this would be less limiting, but at the trade-off of less detail in the face. You can, of course, use your usual prompt craft to refine these images. Now that you have your base character, you can place them in all sorts of locations. Don't forget to like images that work for you. This will serve to further strengthen your AI model. The more you use and rate Midjourney, the better it gets.
Examples of puppeting.
The following are some examples of our character in a variety of settings and even time periods.
Setting is a rustic kitchen with large windows and high ceilings. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George has his back to the camera as he prepares a meal. 1.4. Photograph, hyper-realistic, 8K. Setting is a nightclub. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George is very drunk. Photorealistic, cinematic lighting. Setting is a Victorian tea room. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George is very confused. Photorealistic, sepia. Setting is a high street in an English town. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George is waiting to cross a busy street. Photograph, stormy skies. Setting is a flower garden. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George is strolling along a path. Oil painting. Setting is a football match at Anfield. Unusual B. George is a young man with messy black hair. Unusual B. George is in the crowd and is excited.
Conclusion.
Midjourney can do so much more than churn out stock images from base descriptions. It is a tool that can be used to craft fairly specific images. In this video, we looked at placing characters into specific scenes. This is only the start.